Oh, I can see. All right, are we ready to proceed, everybody? You there, Mr. Wilder? Oh, okay. All right. Good afternoon, and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is John Blatherwick, and I will be chairing this hearing today. Today with me are my fellow panel members, Pontiac Charan, Stan Wilder, and Michael Wildman. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances, noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. We have several today, but we have not received the rest, which means I will have to administer an oath to the applicants or their agents in order to proceed with the hearing. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where added clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision and to all the parties and those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. So before we begin, are there any declarations of interest from any of the panel members regarding applicant or items on this panel, panel 2, or panel 3 today?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, on item 8, the 50 Hopewell, the agent for the applicant is a firm that did work for myself, and we are currently still in the warranty period, so I will not be participating in that one, and I would ask that the committee coordinator move me into a different room while that discussion is ongoing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wildman. We also have, before we begin, confirmation of minutes of April 7th and April 21st, 2021. Everyone, I take it, has read the minutes. Are there any amendments needed to either set of minutes? No. All in favor then of adopting the minutes from April 7th, 2021? All in favor of adopting the minutes from April 21st, 2021? All right, minutes are so adopted. Okay, we have several adjournment requests before we get to the main list of agenda items. The first adjournment request comes from the planning department regarding item 5 on the agenda, 217 Strathcona Avenue. And also one of the neighbors has requested an adjournment. If the planner is there, please, you could articulate their request for an adjournment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there was a missed variance or 2 missed variances on this application, so we have requested an adjournment to recirculate.
You've had a discussion with the applicant regarding this?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And the applicant is in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. And what are you looking for as far as an adjournment period is concerned? How long? 2 weeks?
I believe the intent was to adjourn sine die, but I would like to confirm that with the applicant, so I'm not speaking for him.
Okay. The applicant on this is, agent is Mr. Stelteri. Are you there?
Mr. Chair, I do not see Mr. Salteri online.
All right, well, in that event, then we shall.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt, if it's a sine die adjournment, the agent does not have to be present if the committee adjourns at sine die.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, then. All in favor of adjourning this application sine die until we get the issues resolved? The item is adjourned. Thank you.
Yep.
And the second item that is up for adjournment this afternoon is item 7 on the agenda, 482 Preston Street. I believe Ainsley Dunstone is the agent for the applicant. Are you there? I can't hear you, Mr. Dunstone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. It's Ainsley Dunstan.
Okay,
For the
your address for the record, please.
482 Preston Street, Ottawa.
All right. Okay, and the reason for your request for adjournment, Mr. Dunstone?
In light of some opposition to the to our proposal, we want to step back to do further investigation, and specifically we're looking into doing a sound study in respect of the proposed patio.
Okay.
So we're gonna, in fact, proceed on that immediately, and we're asking for an adjournment.
How soon do you figure it would take to get a sound study or a stationary noise study done?
I'm uncertain at this point, but we're reaching out to to companies today.
So do we adjourn this sine die, or do we give you a later date?
Sine die, please, Mr. Chair.
All right. And the department is Mr. Wilder?
Mr. Dunstan, I would strongly suggest that the report be made available to those parties who have expressed some significant concerns with regards to the proposal. Also, I guess I would also like to know when you come back to us, why this patio could not be created at grade where 4 parking spaces are currently being placed, if that's the case. Thank you.
Sure, I can include that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dunstan, then we will, all in favor of adjourning this application sine die? Okay, the application is adjourned sine die. We will see you at some point in the future.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Done. All right. Now move on to the regular agenda. First items we'll deal with today are items 1 and 2, 16, 18, and 18B Beckwith Road. It's a consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land. Existing detached dwelling will remain on 1 parcel and is proposed to construct a 3-story detached dwelling with a secondary dwelling unit and an attached garage on the other parcel. The existing 2-car detached garage will be demolished. And then there are also minor variances associated with this consent. Permit a reduced easterly side yard setback, permit a eaves to project 0 meters to, and permit an attached garage. The existing detached dwelling will remain in 1 parcel and is proposed to construct a 3-story detached dwelling with a secondary dwelling unit and an attached garage on the other parcel. The existing 2-car detached garage will be demolished. And I believe Mr. Ritzy is the agent for the applicant. Hey there, Mr. Ritzy.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Ritzy.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Yes, it's Bill Ritzy as the applicant for 16 Beckwith.
Okay. Before we begin, I have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And you're aware that I think the planning department has changed its request for adjournment to no concerns. Is the planner there and could they articulate the department's new position, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, good afternoon. So
Thank you.
during conversation with the applicant, it was confirmed that there is no clarity in new bylaw 2020-289 that the porch includes the stairs for the garage setback calculation. And the applicant articulated his position and I have no objection. That's why the adjournment was removed, and also applicant revised his site plan and the walkway is now meeting the bylaw requirements.
Okay. All right, so we cleared that up. All right, Mr. Ritzy, if you'd like to make a brief presentation, please.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. The client, Baxter Williams, has joined this hearing as well.
Right.
He purchased the land last September. It's actually an infill in Old Ottawa East and Brantford Community Center. And he purchased the property as basically to keep the existing house, which is currently a 3-story house on Beckwith Road. And the intent was to keep it, restore it, and then to sever off the residual parcel for a separate single family dwelling. The reason why we're here with the minor variances, one with the 0 lot setback, has to do with the fact that the existing house actually straddles and actually doesn't fit within the zoning required lot widths. So in order for the severed portion to meet the zoning standards of a minimum 9 meters of lot width, we are proposing that the lot line be a 0 lot line against the face of the existing structure, which now gives both lots are now compliant in terms of lot area and lot width. The second variance had to do with the streetscape analysis, in which it was determined by the predominant characteristic that attached garages, front-facing garages, are not permitted. But currently there exists a separate double-car garage with a full asphalt width front yard that we are replacing with a single car garage and a single driveway, with the balance to be landscaped. So the premise was replacing this 2-car garage, no landscape, with a single dwelling with a single width driveway, 3 meters, and it was a substantial improvement to the street. And I believe anybody that's commented certainly agrees with that. The piece between the 4-foot 1.2 meters, which creates the side yard to that 0 lot line, meets that, along with the 2.6 meters side yard on the east side. On the other side, comply to the required side yard setback to the zone. So it is basically a compliance scheme, except for the original house requiring a 0 lot line. The original house also has a 3-meter side yard on the other side. So actually, if you combine that 3 meters along with the 0, you still meet the minimum combined setbacks of 2.8. The being an infill, it was a sensitive piece. The owner actually has been involved in the renovation of the existing house since September of last year, as he's managed himself. So he's well aware of the community and has talked to neighbors. And he's been a big advocate, and he's received a lot of support during his renovation of his intent. The existing house was originally a single house converted to a duplex, but it is now being converted back to a single family house. There's a fair amount of involvement in terms of the renovation because there was fire damage, etc. So it really was a duplex of poor repair. So that's the proposal is with a single family and a secondary dwelling unit. So therefore, at the end of the day, we actually are adding a unit to the overall lot with that, with providing 2 new dwellings, which is certainly part of the official plan intensification program. The owner has been very sensitive to this infill, not only talking to neighbors, but he's reached out to the councillor, reached out to the community association, and to my knowledge, I don't believe there's been any feedback from that, but he's also received letters of support from neighbors.
You have any further elevations you can show us, Mr. Ritzy?
There's the other elevations, and there's a three-dimensional colored perspective that was shown in the submission to give you a sense of. So the form which leads to the design, which we're very sensitive to the current architecture fabric of the community. It's a very traditional neighborhood. There's been plenty of examples of very contemporary style designs. And here we're trying to create a balance between introducing certain slope-roof portions for scale purposes, but also in keeping with the predominantly sloped roof vernacular of the neighborhood.
Question then regarding variance B, permitting the eaves to project 0 meters to a lot line. Will there be gutters attached to those eaves?
Yes, the idea is that there would be rainwater control on both houses.
So the gutters are going to encroach onto the neighboring property?
Yes, they'll be within the easement, which will be legally described as it gets registered.
So that's not a problem?
No, legal's provided their input, and they once an approval is in principle, then the actual details of what actually projects into that easement is clearly defined in the clearly defined legally when it's registered on title.
Okay. You're aware of the comments that don't support your application from neighbors?
Yeah, we are.
And could you please address those comments?
The first comments was from Poppy Weaver, 22 Beckwith Road. And if the 4 points they object to, one, 2 houses and 27-foot lots, well, they're on 30+ foot lots, which is required width by zoning. The dwellings are 2 feet from my property line. Well, 2 feet is still compliant side yard setback. Said the news story will overshadow. Well, actually, it did a shadow study. The existing house is actually higher than the proposed house, and your predominant shadowing would come from the west, which the existing house faces. So actually, it provides more shadowing than the new structure, even though the new structure does project slightly beyond the existing structure, but we are still, that setback is still required, it still meets the zoning requirement for a rear yard setback. And the windows that she's referring to on that window face, there are no windows. The windows she's referring to are the ones on the interior side yard.
There are no windows facing her property
No.
on the side yard.
She's just read her elevation.
You wouldn't happen to have some photos of streetscape context that will show the committee what this is going to look like on that street?
I'm not sure it was all part of my submission. I understood that would all be, what I submitted would be part of today's meeting. And I don't, because I did submit a full street view, including a 3-dimensional representation of the new build.
I just asked the coordinator, do we have that in our package?
No, Mr. Chair, I did not receive a presentation for the hearing.
But it was part of what you just sent me, what you were showing were part of the submission.
Well, apparently we don't have it, Mr. Ritchie.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate. I understood that anything that I submitted would be used as part of this hearing.
Mr. Wilder, you had a comment, question?
Yes, Mr. Ritchie, I guess looking at the infill house, the infill single, could it not be made somewhat narrower? I mean, would it impact that much in terms of design? I mean, we're looking now, a foot and a half, well, a foot and 8 inches gap between the eaves of the two buildings. And I'm not going to question whether or not it's adequate for roof maintenance or not, because that's not my expertise. But certainly, I think in my mind that perhaps they're just a little too close where, your proposed severance line, I gather, correct me if I'm wrong, will be along the actual foundation wall of 16 Beckwith.
Yes, that's right. Well, it's a projection. I mean, it is quite common. There's, we also sent in the supplementary, which hopefully you have, which actually indicates in neighborhood areas that it is consistent with the spacing between houses and between eaves, so it's quite a common.
So, by having that foundation line, right, but having that severance along the foundation wall, that in turn reduces the setback of the eastern side yard of 16 Beckworth from 2 feet to 0. Is that correct?
Yes, and there are, even within that, there are in zoning, you're permitted to project your any eave projection, roof projections within a foot of the property line.
All right. To me, it still looks, well, I appreciate maintaining the existing home, which I encourage certainly where possible. I just feel that it's a bit crowded by putting in this infill, the size and shape that it is at the current time.
I think in reality, because the nature of the existing 3-story brick house with a mansard roof, when you pair it to the lighter colored, smaller scaled infill, as well as it has minimal projection because there's portions which are flat roofs. So we minimize the any projection of the new build. That's something that we are prepared to live with. And I think you'll appreciate more of the space at the lower levels than you will up at the high roof line.
Well, I wish I could see a streetscape. I wasn't able to go down to view this. And certainly in terms of the neighborhoods, the more traditional appearance, as is mentioned, I'd like to have seen a streetscape, something that shows some comparisons in terms of the density on the street.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for that.
I also mentioned that the 2-foot setback on the side yard against the property owner, there's actually, and again, if you had the photograph in front of you, it's a driveway. So actually that 2-foot side yard abuts a driveway of the adjacent lot. So that gives you significant spatial separation between the new infill and the existing house.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
So what are we looking at here, Mr. Ritchie?
So if you might control this, just go down further. Keep going. Okay, so that, just turn it around. Want to go back up the street, yeah. It's unfortunate you take all this time to put this assembled together and you don't have the benefit of all that. So, okay, so just up on your right is the existing 2-car garage.
What are we looking at here?
We're trying to,
This is where a collage of photographs that can be put onto a piece of paper really comes in handy.
I submitted all that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why you don't have it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm as frustrated as you are.
Okay. Well, while we're trying to get the pictures organized, Mr. Wildman, you had a comment?
Thank you, Chair. Just to the staff who's working on this, I don't see which staff member is working on this on the summary sheet. There are 7 conditions listed, and there was discussion about some form of an easement to the middle, yet there's no reference to that in the conditions. Could I have staff elaborate on that discussion?
Yes, Mr. Waldman, sorry, we would like to add it, and thank you for mentioning that. It's our mistake.
Okay, so on that there was the agent suggested that the legal had been discussing what type of language would be prepared to support this type of use. Has city legal had any look at this at all, or is this just something that's being done by the agent?
I imagine it should be joint use and maintenance agreement that should be registered on title by legal
Yeah.
services.
Okay. And has there been any discussion about whether it's actually the structure of the building being the eave that is coming up to the lot line, or whether it is the structure of the building in addition to an eaves trough that will be coming up and extending over the line? Has there been any discussion about that?
As it was articulated by the applicant that it will be eaves projection, but maybe Mr. Ritzi can clarify that.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that I guess to answer your question, it's just that portion of the mansard roof that projects beyond what would be the zero lot line would be described in the legal description. If the eaves trough is added, then that would just be again part of the written description.
So if an eaves trough was provided, so right now the way it would work is mansard roof or not, there's going to be runoff and potential winter cast off depending on the time of the year. That's going to go beyond the lot line. But you're saying if there's an eaves trough.
Well, I
I
say
was
that
under the
because
impression from the earlier discussion that there would be an eaves trough and that the eaves trough would encroach over the lot line. Can you clarify that?
well, the projection that's showing right now for the roof itself, if we were that's part there is not, because it's a mansard roof, it's primarily a flat roof. So what is being drained is on a very steep slope, which obviously does have runoff, but it's not accumulated runoff like you might have as terms of as indicated by one of the opposers, ice buildup, etc. There's just not the inclination to do that. But if there is an eaves trough added, to be quite honest, I haven't talked to the owner about that, but then that would be obviously included or try to incorporate into the existing roof overhang.
Hi, Bill. Can you hear me?
Yep.
There is an eaves trough along the roof right now. And that would
Excuse me, who are we speaking to?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Baxter Williams. I'm the owner of the property.
Thank you.
And I apologize for not introducing myself, but I just want to clarify there would be an eaves trough. There is an eaves trough, and it would be registered as part of the encroachment agreement. Just to clarify that.
All right. And if we can go back to that graphic that shows the two houses side by side.
Chair, if you don't mind, I do have one more question, but I'm willing to wait for you to go.
Well, I'm just looking at this diagram, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the line that's extended that parallel to the two lines in the middle that are parallel that delineate the width of part 2. On the left-hand side of that, I'm assuming that is the property line.
Correct.
And therefore the eaves of the building, if I'm looking down to where the gutter would be, the eaves are encroaching 1 foot into that easement.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. Okay, Mr. Wildman, please.
Okay, so now I'm getting confused now because the relief sought is for the eave to project to 0 meters to the lot line. Can somebody explain this to me?
It's not.
Well, that's I'll start, and perhaps Marcia can add to it. I talked to building services because I actually wanted to know about if there was any issue on the construction of it, being on the lot line, which there wasn't. And the only way to address we actually did not have it originally, and we were asked to add it. And so we delayed our application 2 weeks to add that note. And that was agreed by the planners that this was the best way to identify that the eve did not meet the current zoning standards of a 1 foot setback to the property line.
So back to the planner. Can you, is this language give you the comfort that you require, knowing that we're really not talking, we're talking about encroaching now, and it wasn't clear to me from the language of the relief sought that there's actually an encroachment in addition to the eve. So is this your understanding?
Yes, but in my opinion, it would be cleared with the joint use and maintenance agreement.
Okay, and so what is the distance from the edge of rooftop to the edge of rooftop at their closest point?
On their site plan, for the development, Mr. Wellman?
Yes,
sorry, I'd like to interject.
Yes.
So the 4 feet is, we take the 4 feet separation from building faces that create the easement. You have 1 foot, 1'4" on one side and 1 foot on the others. That's 2'4". That'd give you 1'6" between at the tightest points. And can I also, it's misleading a bit because that 1 foot is a sloped roof portion, which only occurs at the front and the back. So actually where that mansard roof would actually be more in line with the face of the building, which would be an additional foot. So to answer your question, in reality, from the face of the new build to the eave, you'd have 2'6".
Okay.
Because that the front line of the roof, you wouldn't see where that mansard occurs down the depth of the lot.
All right, Mr. Chair, certainly if committee were so inclined to approve this, that additional joint use and maintenance agreement registered on title would be required. I'm still on the fence, honestly, to be fair on this one, but I guess if I were to support it, that condition would definitely have to be there. I'm still torn on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Mr. Wilder.
Mr. Ritchie, I'm looking at the infill building. I noticed the first floor, I'm looking up at the second floor. Could that not be made narrower? I mean, I'm looking at it's obviously wider at both ends of than the ground floor. I mean, obviously it would impact, I guess, the size of the bedrooms, but it would still be a saleable home, would it not?
Sorry, you're asking that the secondary line in from the roof line be reduced?
Correct.
Again, this is it's modeled with these projecting dormer windows. That is again a scaling purpose to reduce the wall effect.
Bill, may I jump in?
Mr. Williams, if you wouldn't mind, let Mr. Ritchie speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Please
you.
continue, Mr. Ritchie. Please continue, Mr. Ritchie.
And so that's the approach to scale down the upper floor with the dormers, et cetera. And you have a flat roof above it, et cetera, which also scales it down. And we're also basically looking at construction where you're lining everything up for construction. And I don't see the benefit of pulling it in. It's a fairly, because of other setbacks we have, it's not, I don't see it as a significant change to do that.
All right. Mr.
All
Williams,
right.
you had a comment?
Mr. Chair, I'm
Oh,
just
Mr.
wondering if
Wilder.
we can reserve on this. I'm not sure how the
Yeah,
other.
I think we're going to reserve on this. Mr. Williams, please proceed.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that the second floor is not wider than the first floor. What you're seeing is the impact of the eaves overhang. I'm not sure if that was obvious, so I thought that was a useful factual clarification.
No, Baxter, he's looking to move it in further than the ground floor.
Okay.
But the ground, we know the ground floor does line up with the second floor.
I'm sorry, I missed that, and I apologize. If you don't,
Can I just summarize? So we've come in with a proposal to sever to take basically what were once 2 conforming lots to create 2 new conforming lots. We have the approval in principle of planning to introduce a garage, which is an important piece. And now we're debating on, it's all come down now to nothing that we've applied for except for the projection of a roof into an easement, which all gets wrapped up by legal, and that is, and planning will tell you that's a requirement. Yes, it should be a condition, and that's the condition that we're going to meet. So I'm concerned that we're getting too focused on something that'll be handled by legal to satisfy both owners of the property. It'll be clearly outlined that, and again, the 3-dimensional piece is that you will never actually see them come that close together.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Wilder?
Sorry. Mr. Baxter, I mean, you misunderstood. Yes, I'm suggesting it be pulled in. Do you have any comment on that? Would that be a problem for you in the design?
I think when you look at the overall width of the house right now, you would be cramping the bedrooms at the front of the house. And so that would be a concern for me. We played with several variants on this design, and a lot what's afforded to us right now allows for a very good layout, which would be lost if you tried to reduce the width of this house. So, that's, something, I don't want to give you the whole history on that, but that is, there's been a huge investment looking at how you could lay this house out to keep it fairly low and achieve our objectives of having a secondary dwelling unit and then a reasonable living space for us above.
And Mr. Wilder, you talked on the outset about this proposal, is that from a market point of view, it would dramatically hurt the market of those 2 rooms.
If you don't mind, I also considered a lot about other houses in the neighborhood. The first thing I'd observe, and I don't know how material it is, but Ron Farmer and Poppy Weaver have presented themselves as a couple to me. So you've got 2 people writing and complaining, but it seems to me that they are joint owners of a number of properties in the neighborhood. So in terms of judging community support, I think that's important to keep in mind that the 3 people who wrote in support of this were independent households that are arm's length from each other. The second observation I'd make is I did spend a lot of time looking at the character of the neighborhood and working with Bill. And in terms of lot setbacks, like the pattern we have with the driveway next to this house is repeated down the street. And in fact, I would say in a dozen different houses on, within what would be considered, you'd need to look at to do a neighborhood analysis, or they all have lot lines of less than 2 feet that are buffered by a side driveway. So what we're proposing here is not out of character with how the neighborhood's been constructed. This is sort of the outcome of a neighborhood that was built, before setbacks were in place, and people built to the lot line often on one side of the house. I would certainly, I've mentioned in my own submissions, we have spent a considerable amount taking what was a dilapidated house and restoring it, like my cost will exceed I can't say exactly now, but are in the $800,000 range. So, you know, for me, I could have ripped down the old house and I could have constructed 2 new houses, and I wouldn't be at committee of adjustment because I'd have a center, you know, width driveway down between, and, you know, the new house would be pressed up against the west end, just as, you know, within 2 feet of the lot line on the west end, just as the old, you know, what I'm proposing is on the east end. And if you look at the neighborhood, I think that would be a much worse design than what we've done here. So I hope you keep that in mind in your deliberations.
I can just remind Baxter that there seems to be no issue about our proposal to have a garage.
I think in terms of managing the encroachments between the 2 houses, that's an issue which can be fully addressed if it's properly described in an encroachment and maintenance agreement. And, you know, you have examples like this occurs frequently. Obviously, these are single family homes, but anytime you're looking at row houses, or where freehold row houses, you need to get into encroachment agreements. So it's really a matter of doing, from my perspective, if you don't mind me commenting, doing the needed due diligence to ensure that the encroachment agreement and maintenance rights are well described in managing that easement between the existing and the new house.
I agree. All right. Anything? Are you done, Mr. Ritchie? That's it for the presentation.
Yes,
please address the 4 tests.
4 tests, yes. So we do believe it's minor in nature, the setback, and the streetscape character, front-facing garages, given its existing context. We basically are adding an additional unit for intensification official plan, and we certainly are within the prescribed context of the neighborhood as a residential and fitting in as part of the neighborhood agreement, and it's definitely compatible. We haven't introduced something that it does not fit into the neighborhood.
You're aware of comments from Hydro regarding maintaining clearances and the right-of-way people on private approach permits required for new driveways, and then the conditions, cash in lieu of parkland, a limiting distance condition, detached garage demolished, servicing plan, accessory structure demolished, grading and drainage plan, protection of trees and updated tree information report, and I guess on number 8, which would be the need for an easement.
Correct. We're aware of those.
I think what we will do is we will reserve our decision on this application, and you'll receive our decision in 10 days' time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next application we'll deal with is item 3 on the agenda, 7 Frederick Place. And this is a permission to expand a legal non-conforming use to allow for the construction of an addition on the 2nd floor, which will alter the northern roof line of the detached dwelling. And I believe Mr. West is the agent for the applicant. Mr. West. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, everyone.
All right, we're going to have to administer the oath first. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear.
All right. If you'd like to make a brief presentation, please, Mr. West.
Absolutely. I'll just wait for the coordinator to share their screen. Excellent. Thank you. The application in front of you this afternoon is a permission application on the property municipally known as 7 Frederick Place. The subject property is located in the Capital Ward in the city of Ottawa. Specifically, it's located in the Dow's Lake neighborhood in the corner of Frederick Place and Charles Jackson. You can see the subject property in relation to Carling Avenue and Dow's Lake on the figure in front of you. You switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the slide in front of you now shows a more zoomed in image of the subject property. One thing to note about this image is that the front lot line is deemed to be Charles Jackson Avenue. Switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. The owners of the subject property are renovating the existing legally non-conforming detached dwelling to increase the number of bedrooms on the second story of the home. As you can see in the image in front of you, the detached dwelling on the subject property existed in 1958, meaning that it predates the establishment of the first comprehensive zoning bylaw. The purpose of the renovations are to accommodate the owner's growing family. The proposed renovations do not expand the house beyond the existing footprint. The use of the property will not change, and the height of the detached dwelling will not change. The roof lines on the north elevations are going to be modified to allow an 8-foot exterior wall and a flat ceiling. The modification of this roof line will convert one of the bedrooms into 2. This means the house is undergoing internal renovations to turn 2 bedrooms into 3 bedrooms. Switch to the next slide, please. So the figure in front of you right now is the site plan. As I said, the purpose of the permission application is to permit the expansion of a legal non-conforming use. In this case, it's the detached dwelling to have a rear yard setback of 1.43 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters. On the right side of the image in front of you, I'm not sure if you could see it, might be hard to read, but you can see the rear yard setback of 1.43 meters. So with respect to rationale, permission applications are regulated under section 45(2) of the Planning Act. And although the tests for permission applications are not stated in the Planning Act, they have been established through case law. The decision of Sims al versus Dashko explains that the expanding of illegal non-conforming rights is reviewed through 2 tests. The first test for expanding a legal non-conforming use is that if it is appropriate. The subject property has a legally non-conforming detached dwelling, and as you can see, located in an established residential neighborhood. There'll be no changes to the use in the subject property. There'll be no changes in the building footprint as a result of the permission application. There'll be no changes to the height of the building. The proposed reconstruction modifies the roof line slightly to increase the efficiency of the second story of the dwelling. We switch to the next slide, please. So just to expand on that last spot, the image in front of you depicts the changes to the exterior elevations of the detached dwelling as part of this application. The 2 elevations at the top of the screen represent the existing house, and the 2 elevations at the bottom of the screen represent the proposed changes. So to summarize, the roof lines are being slightly modified. A dormer is being removed in the rear elevation, added to the side elevation, and the porch will be closed off. The renovations of this non-conforming building are considered appropriate. The second test for expanding a legal non-conforming use is impact. As previously discussed, the detached dwelling on the subject property predates the first comprehensive zoning bylaw in the city of Ottawa. The permission application itself relates to changes at the rear of the building, since it's the rear yard setback that is not complying. The affected neighbors that view the rear of the detached dwelling are to the east and to the north of the subject property. The neighbors to the east at 5 Frederick and to the north at 1 Charles Jackson, 296, 294, and 292 Carling of the subject property have existed since 1958 as well. There are no impacts on the privacy of the neighbors, as there are currently windows in the rear elevation of the subject property. There are no impacts of reduced sunlight on neighbors, as there is no change in the building height. We switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So our clients have also discussed this permission application with most of the neighborhood. The map shown in the image in front of you details all the neighbors that have offered their written support or those that have requested to speak in support of the permission application. So the proposed renovations to the legally non-conforming building will have no impacts to the neighbors. So in conclusion, the proposed development conforms to section 45(2) of the Planning Act. Proposed development is appropriate and desirable for the use of land in the surrounding area. The renovations of the legally non-conforming use will have no impact on the surrounding properties. The permission to expand illegal non-conforming rights of the detached dwelling at 7 Frederick represent good land use planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Any questions from the panel members? I believe we also have two other speakers, neighbors, nearby neighbors in support. Mr. Bell and Monique Scott as well. Either one of them wish to speak?
Yes, I can go first. My name is Monique Scotty. I live at 294 Carling Avenue.
Thank you.
You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So we've been here since 2017. Our property is approximately 20 feet, if not a bit less, from the back of the property in question. As already stated, we did send a letter in support of the upgrades, that's what I'll call them. In the interest of time, I will not repeat everything that Mr. West just said, but I will say on behalf of us and the surrounding neighborhood, we're particularly pleased with the transparency that the owners of the building have offered in terms of this proposed renovation. They've been very clear about what they want to do. There is, as was mentioned, no change to the height of the building. There's no change to privacy, and there's no change to shadow or anything that would affect the neighbors surrounding. So all of those things in our mind make this, frankly, a no-brainer in terms of modernizing a building that was designed to be a single-family home, and which we want to see retain its initial character in the neighborhood. The house requires an upgrade. There's no question of that in my mind, and we fully support this approach and the plans as presented to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scotty. Mr. Bell?
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Bell, 8 Charles Jackson Avenue.
Okay.
We live across the street from the subject house. We're looking at the side and the front of the house. If this change will have no impact on the visual impact or usage impact on us or the community around us, we certainly support the modernization of the house, and we support the application that they've made.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Chow, do you have comments, or I just have to look at you? No comments?
I think this afternoon you just get to look at me, Mr. Chairman. I think that Mr. West and the neighbors have covered the bases quite nicely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chow. So any questions for the applicant? All in favor of granting this permission as submitted? Permission's granted. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next application we'll deal with today is 17 Gwynn Avenue. And this is a consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land. Existing single detached family dwelling will remain on one of the parcels, and it is proposed to construct a new 2-story detached single family dwelling on the other parcel of land. And number 4, I believe, which one of the owners is going to speak to this application?
Mr. Chair, we don't see the owners online. If they are, perhaps they could raise their hand so we can bring them into the hearing.
Do we? All right.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yep.
Hi.
Hello.
Please identify yourself and your address.
Umit Tabodi, owner of the property, 17 Wayne Avenue.
Okay.
My wife.
I'm Rasheen Gautam.
I have to administer the oath before we begin. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes.
Yes, I swear.
Okay. And just very, very briefly explain what you're requesting.
We tried to do the minor variance on the property that we bought a few years ago. We applied for the minor variance on 2 occasions, but because of the situation with the bank and last year with the COVID, we couldn't fulfill the application. So the application was collapsed, and then we had to submit a new one. But luckily, we are on a track to get everything sorted as quickly as possible, and then we can start the process.
Okay. So you're not in the process of building the new house yet?
When we did the first one, they did the services and we did the foundation both at the same time.
Okay.
But since then, the project was stopped, and then we put the covering to protect the house from the foundation with the freezing and everything. And then when the permit is submitted, we can start the job.
Okay. You're aware of the comments from Ottawa Hydro about the new meter must be a meter from the property line?
Yeah.
The right-of-way people at the city telling you that the private approach permit's required because I'm assuming that's tied to your driveway. And the conditions of cash in lieu of parkland, limiting distance condition, a servicing plan condition, grading and drainage plan, a noise attenuation study or a central air agreement registered on title.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the members of the committee regarding this application? All in favor of granting this consent as applied for?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, sorry, we do have a neighbor that
okay.
is online for this one.
All right. And who would that neighbor be? Ms. Gentile?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you
Hello.
for having me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Can you identify yourself, please, and give us your
Yes,
address?
my name is Patrizia Gentile.
Okay.
And I'm one of the owners of 27 Gwynn Avenue.
Okay.
There's a lot of technical stuff here that I'm not really quite understanding, but everything's fine. I just wanted to actually ask, and I actually could have asked my neighbor earlier today when I spoke to him, how many times can these approvals be granted? I guess that's my kind of a technical question that I have. Could this go on for another 5 years? I guess
No. This is over today.
Okay, this is the last application.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure the owner doesn't want it to go on for 5 years or 5 months or 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, well, thank you so much. I actually spoke to my neighbor earlier today, so I had other questions that he was able to answer, but I forgot this one, so I thought I'd take this opportunity. Thank you for your time.
This will be it.
Thank you.
Right? And I'm looking at the owner, correct?
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you very much. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Okay. All in favor of granting this consent as applied for? Your consent's approved. Good luck with your project. Next application we'll deal with today is 6 on the agenda, and we have a statutory declaration, so there won't need to be an oath issued. 1 Robinson Avenue. This is a minor variance to permit the temporary storage of equipment related to construction at 200 Lees Avenue, including temporary structures to be located at 1 Robinson Avenue during the period of construction. And the agent for this is Ms. Butt. Is she there?
I am, yes. Hi.
We have your address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm at 145 Shanley Terrace in Oakville, Ontario.
Okay, could you give us a brief rundown of what you're applying for and why?
Yes, for sure. So I have prepared a presentation. So good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, and members of the public. I'm here on behalf of our client, the University of Ottawa. Also in attendance today is my colleague, Benjamin Clare. Next slide, please. So this slide just provides a brief overview of the structure of my presentation today. I won't go through it for the sake of time, but just it's here for reference. Next slide, please. So the proposal involves the University of Ottawa's broader holdings. The subject lands are located at 1 Robinson Avenue, which is outlined in purple. 200 Lees Avenue is outlined in yellow and is part of the campus that is undergoing construction. Storage related to construction is currently located where the orange dotted line is shown, and both of these properties are owned by the University of Ottawa. Next slide, please. So 1 Robinson Avenue has an area of 13,215 square meters, as well as 246 meters of frontage on Robinson Avenue and 286 meters of frontage on Lees, and access is provided by way of Robinson Avenue. And I'd also just like to note here that the lands are zoned mixed use center within the official, or excuse me, designated mixed use center within the official plan and are zoned transit oriented developments of zone 3. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the proposed use of the subject lands is temporary storage essential to construction at 200 Lees Avenue. So the property that was formerly highlighted in yellow. The zoning bylaw permits temporary storage and accessory structures essential to construction on the site of construction, but not off-site, which is the case in this instance. And the sketch shown right now outlines the proposed layout of the subject lands. Next slide, please. So here I've just provided a slightly zoomed in version in the event that the previous slide is unclear. And you'll see that storage will be focused towards the western third of the property, which will be fenced, while the eastern 2/3 will be left open for parking and snow storage areas. Next slide, please. So this minor variance application requests relief from section 71(1)(a) of the zoning bylaw to permit temporary storage of equipment related to construction at 200 Lees Avenue, including associated temporary structures, to be located at 1 Robinson Avenue during the period of construction, which, as discussed with staff, will be a 3-year period. Next slide, please. So the planning brief submitted with this application addresses the 4 tests within section 45(1) of the Planning Act. At a high level, the proposed variance does not deviate from the general intent and purpose of the mixed-use center official plan designation, and compatibility with adjacent properties is not expected to be compromised. The intent of the zoning bylaw is to be permissive of this use. However, the bylaw does not contemplate the campus environment where some properties are not immediately adjacent to one another. Given that 1 Robinson is vacant and relatively isolated, the relief requested is minor in nature in that it is not anticipated to have undue adverse impacts on surrounding land uses. And finally, approval of the relief requested will facilitate construction at 200 Lees Avenue and is desirable for the appropriate use of land, especially the overall University of Ottawa campus holdings. And next slide, please. So in closing, I would like to touch on discussions and correspondence we have had with staff and the community. First, pre-consultation occurred with city staff on November 10th, 2020, and we've had less formal dialogue with staff on several occasions thereafter. We have been in touch with Ward Councillor Fleury's office and Action Sandy Hill by email regarding this application on a couple of occasions, and no concerns have been raised. And finally, we have also received and reviewed staff and agency comments which raise no concerns. We don't have any major concerns with comments within the report, especially with respect to the specifics of the minor variance. Planning staff have raised some additional comments, also included within their report, that will require some back and forth, but these are more related to the details of the temporary use of the site, including grading and drainage, and will be addressed following this variance process. And this concludes my formal presentation. We will be available for any questions or if any clarification is required. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buck. Mr. Wildman, you had a question, comment?
Thank you, Chair. You indicated 36 months. Do you have any concerns with us establishing this as a temporary and establishing a 36-month period?
No concerns.
Okay. And second, I imagine you've been talking with MTO. It's within their permit control area.
No, we haven't received any concerns from MTO that I'm aware of, and I don't believe staff have either.
Yeah, just by the time you start doing your work there, you're going to require a permit. Have you initiated any of that discussion?
No, we haven't begun the permit process.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
And sorry for interrupting. Through you, Mr. Chair, my colleague Benjamin Clare is raising his hand, and maybe he'll be able to help clarify.
Mr. Clare.
Yep, sorry, I just thought I would add through you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, that I do believe it was flagged that MTO involvement would be required by way of a building and land use permit. So that's something that will be pursued in addition to any kind of permitting, I'll say, with the building division of the City of Ottawa.
Yep, okay. That's what I assumed, and that would have been the one I would have been most concerned about, so that's fine. Mr. Chair, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Butt. Mr. Clare, any further questions from the committee, comments? So what it looks like is what we'll do is we will limit the granting of the variance to a 36-month period. So we'll terminate it at that point, making sure that this doesn't become permanent on that landscape. And you're in agreement with that?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right. All in favor of granting this variance as applied for with that condition? Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Conditions granted.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Next application we'll deal with today is 50 Hopewell Avenue. It's a minor variance to permit reduced front yard setbacks, increased shared driveway width, and to permit a front door to face the side yard for the construction of a new vestibule entry at the front of the existing dwelling. And Mr. Mulholland, I believe, is the agent for the applicant.
Yes, good afternoon.
We have your address, please, Mr. Mulholland.
7725 Llewellyn.
Okay, and very briefly, please explain exactly why you're requesting a variance.
Yeah, there should be a site plan available, hopefully, through the shared screen. A fairly straightforward application. In this case, the homeowners are undertaking a larger renovation project that's compliant with the underlying zoning. One thing, I don't know if it's possible to zoom in on the front portion. We're looking at adding a small vestibule at the front to provide some separation between the outside and the inside. As you can see right now, it sort of opens right into their living room space. So it'll provide a bit of a cold break, a little more room at the entryway with some space for some benches and people to go in and out a little bit easier. And then a few steps down in place of an existing porch that's there currently. It does project slightly into the required front yard, and being in the mature neighborhood overlay, it requires a streetscape character analysis, which showed front doors facing the front property line being the predominant character in the neighborhood, which necessitates the second minor variance to face the front door sideways. As you can see, it does reduce the impact on the streetscape generally, since it moves that stairwell from the front to the side. The other minor variance relates to the existing driveway. There's no changes proposed, but in an abundance of caution, staff suggested that while we're here, we legalize its non-conforming nature.
Understood. And I should have had you swear the oath first before we began discussion. We're going to have to do that.
Oh, my apologies. I thought we'd forward that over.
Pardon me?
I thought I'd forwarded that in, so my apologies.
No. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days for the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Okay. Any questions from the panel regarding this application? All right. I note there are Hydro Ottawa standard comments regarding maintaining clearances.
Of course.
And then the right-of-way people at the city, private approach permits required regarding the driveway.
Yeah, I think there may have been a misunderstanding in their reading. There is no new driveway, so the private approach is existing.
Yeah.
And there's no changes proposed.
So it may not be required at all.
No, it shouldn't be.
Okay. All right, thanks. All in favor of this application as presented? Your application is granted. Good luck with your
Thank
project.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Next application we'll deal with is item 9 on the agenda, 42A, 42B Young Street. These are consents to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for each half of the existing semi-detached dwelling. And Mr. Segreto is the agent on this application.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Michael Segreto here.
Mr. Segreto, the oath first. Now, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Okay, so very briefly, Mr. Segreto, on the consent.
What we have here, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, is an existing 2-story semi-detached dwelling, which was built 3 or 4 years ago. And what we want to do is we want to establish separate ownership for each half of the semi. Therefore, we're asking to sever the property for separate ownership.
There are 3 conditions which we have in front of us: independent services, an agreement re-noise, and a joint use and maintenance agreement. What kind of a noise agreement have you been required to provide?
Can we put something on title there, should somebody purchase these things once they go up for sale, that we can lock them into some sort of an agreement rather than getting a noise study? I think we've done that in the past in some of these semis. If we can do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, there's a sound attenuation wall along the south side of the 417.
Yeah.
So really, there's not, and I've been in that neighborhood many times, there's not really that much of a noise problem from the 417, given that wall.
I agree.
So a noise warning clause on title, I think, would be appropriate if the rest of the members agree. Modify the condition. Save your client a little money.
That'd be great.
Any comments, questions from the panel on this? All in favor of granting the application as amended? Your application's granted.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem, Mr. Segretto. Now, next application we'll deal with today is item 9 on the agenda. Oh, we've already dealt with item 9. All right, sorry. Item 10 on the agenda, 623, 625 Lion Street, South, sorry. Consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land that is proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a 3-story semi-detached dwelling on the property. And this was adjourned on February 3rd. Yeah. So I think Mr. West is the agent.
Good afternoon.
All right, Mr. West. If we could go through the oath again. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Okay. All right, please proceed, Mr. West.
There we go. Excellent, thank you. So the applications that are before you at this time are severance applications on the property so known as 623 and 625 Lion. Switch to the next slide, please. Sorry, if the coordinator could just switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the subject site is in the Capital Ward. Specifically, the subject site is on the south of Chamberlain Avenue and Highway 417, west of Bank Street, north of Renfrew Avenue, east of Percy Street. So the figure in front of you right now is the site plan. The applications for consent proposed to sever the existing parcel into 2 lots. The subject site is currently occupied by a semi-detached building on 1 lot. The semi-detached building is currently under construction at this time. A little bit of history on this application. It was originally approved by the Committee of Adjustment on December 12th, 2017, but the severance has since lapsed. As part of this previous application, minor variances were approved. The proposed severance today is fully compliant with the zoning bylaw. The severance applications were refiled on December 1st, 2020 after the lapse period. During the hearing for the severance applications on February 3rd, 2021, an adjournment sine die was requested to discuss the conditions with municipal staff. We've now discussed these conditions with municipal staff and we're returning with these 2 severance applications. I would just like to stress that there has been no changes to the plan since the initial approval on December 12th, 2017. Switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the figure in front of you now is the draft reference plan for this property. The first severance application will create the northerly lot labeled as Part 1 on the image in front of you. It will have an area of 156.2 meters squared and 14.4 meters of frontage on Lion Street South. Severance application 2 will create the southerly lot labeled as Part 2. Part 2 will have an area of 143.3 meters squared and 7.12 meters of frontage on Lion Street South. I'll speak to the rationale for the severances now. I'll just go through them rather quickly. So it's a very straightforward application. With respect to subsection 53(1) of the Planning Act, the proposal does not necessitate the construction of new public infrastructure, which includes roads or services. As such, a plan of subdivision is not required. With respect to subsection 5124A of the Planning Act, the 70 detached dwellings and proposed lots are within an urban area of the City of Ottawa as regard for several matters of provincial interest, including the supply, efficient use, conservation of energy and water, adequate provision, efficient use of communication, transportation, sewage, and water systems, minimization of waste, the early development of safe and healthy communities, appropriate location for growth and development, promotion and development that is designed to be sustainable, support public transit, be oriented to pedestrians. With respect to subsection 5124B of the Planning Act, semi-detached dwellings and proposed lots are located within a fully developed neighborhood where hard and soft services are available. The proposed severance is not premature. With respect to subsection 5124C of the Planning Act, the subject property is designated general urban area. In the general urban area, the City of Ottawa official plan encourages and supports infill intensification. The semi-detached dwellings in the proposed lots result in intensification of an existing lot within the general urban area. Semi-detached dwellings are a form of low-rise residential development permitted in the general urban area and under the zoning. With respect to subsection 5124D of the Planning Act, proposed severance will result in 2 lots that fully comply with the requirements of the R3P exception 1474 zone and the previously approved minor variances with respect to lot width and lot area for the semi-detached dwellings. With respect to subsection 5124F, proposed severances will result in lots that fully comply with the requirements of the zoning and the previously approved minor variance with respect to lot width and lot area. The proposed lot width and lot area are compatible with existing land use patterns and lot fabric of the neighborhood. With respect to 5124I of the Planning Act, the semi-detached dwelling is connected to existing utilities and municipal services. With respect to subsection 5124J, there are several schools located in close proximity to the subject property, including First Avenue Public School, Glashan Public School, and much more public school. With respect to subsection 5124L, infill intensification within the urban area efficiently utilizes energy, infrastructure, services, transit, and land. So in conclusion, the proposed lots have regard for matters of provincial interest. They're not premature, they're in the public interest, conform to the official plan, suitable for the land, are compliant with the lot shape and size and zoning bylaw, have adequate utilities, municipal services, are located close to schools, utilize the service efficiently. Semi-detached dwellings in the proposed lots satisfy the criteria of section 5124 of the Planning Act. Would now be a good time to talk about the conditions. The conversation.
Before we go on to that, I think Mr. Wildman had a comment.
Just a point of clarification, I guess. If the committee coordinator could just put that draft reference plan back up for 1 second. And if we could look at the 2 areas shown on the plan and then the 2 areas shown on the documentation for today, they don't appear to line up exactly. And I just wanted to make sure that either we have the right information or your plan has the right information, because it caught my attention when you said the area was 153.6, whereas our documentation is 154.2. And the same with respect to 146.2, whereas our documentation is 145.6 on the area. So I just want to make sure we get it right so that we don't run into an issue later. Can you clarify for us which is the correct area that we should be using?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we rely on the draft reference plan.
Okay.
So that means we'll change area part 1 to 153.6. And we'll change part 2 to 146.2. Or one's that 145.2 or 146.2?
146, I think, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And our apologies for the confusion.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman, for pointing that out.
Okay, so we have amended parcel sizes. Regarding the conditions, I don't think we need condition 2 because the existing dwelling has been removed. I understand you're under construction right now.
That's correct.
The hydro easement over a portion of part 1 is still required. Servicing plan, joint use and maintenance agreement, grading and drainage. We're wondering about the noise study. I believe that the planning department has indicated that there will not be a study needed. Am I correct?
I can certainly speak to that, or if you'd like the planning department to speak to that.
So the regarding the noise attenuation study, there's been a change in the department's position on this, I believe.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair. So it is no longer being required as a condition. We are asking that we amend it to a warning, and the new wording has been provided to committee.
Okay, so basically just a warning on title.
Yes.
Okay. So that changes that. Okay, Mr. West? Anything further?
Nope, I believe that was it.
We've gone through all of these standard from hydro that need their easement, as you know. All right. Any further questions or comments from the members of the panel? All in favor of granting this consent as amended, both the part numbers amended to reflect what's on the R plan and the change in the conditions. The application is granted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next application on the agenda is 51 Garrison Street, bracket 327 Rockhurst Road. And these are consents to subdivide the property in 2 separate parcels of land, proposed to demolish the existing detached garage and to construct a 2-story detached dwelling on the northerly part of the property. 2 driveways entering off Rockhurst Road and a detached 2-car garage are proposed to be constructed between the 2 dwellings along the shared property line. It is also proposed to construct a full 2nd floor on the existing dwelling, which faces on Rockhurst Road. Minor variances are requested to permit reduced lot areas, front, side, and rear yard setbacks, and to permit a reduced walkway separation from the driveway. It is proposed to demolish the existing detached garage, construct 2-story detached dwelling on the northerly part of the property, 2 driveways entering off Rockhurst and a detached 2-car garage. We've already mentioned that in the consent application are proposed to be constructed between 2 dwellings along the shared property line. And then there's the reference to the full 2nd floor in the existing dwelling. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Kai. Can't hear you, sir. We still can't hear you.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear?
Yeah, could you give us your name and address, please?
My name is Peter Tsai. My address is 234 Widodusk Street.
Okay. All right, if you'd like to present us with your application, this was, as you know, this was adjourned on the 3rd of March for additional variances, and there have been some changes to those.
Yes.
Take us through your application, please.
Okay. This application is applied for the severance for the current property address 51.
Oh, hang on. I
Yeah.
almost forgot.
Okay.
I have to administer the oath.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, it has.
Okay, please proceed. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Okay. Our application is to sever the property address 51 Garrison Street to create a new parcel fronting on the Rockhurst Road, and also to build and construct a new house on the new created parcel and do a addition and renovation to the existing house. This application also involves minor variance about the several minor variances. First is the reduced lot area, minimum lot area, which by law requires 450 square meters, and now the created new parcel is the proposed new parcel is 282 square meters, and the retained 51 garrison is 300 square meters, and also the reduced front yard setback for the Rockhurst property from the 3 meters to reduce to 2.6 meters, and that also there are two garage, which is the two-car garage. Actually is a single garage attached on the property line. The setback of the side yard reduced from 1.2 meters to 0 meter, and also the rear yard of the 51 garrison. Actually, no, that is the accessory building setback from the rear yard, which from 0.6 meters to 0 meter. Okay, this is okay. This sorry, I was new to this kind of application. I should have prepared a presentation PPT, but I didn't have. But in my submitted planning rationale, this area this reduced lot area is very popular in this area. So this our proposed severance, the reduced lot. I did some renderings, and the photo merged into the aerial photo. We can see if I don't know whether you have the photo with you, the rendering with you. The aerial view rendering. Sorry, I should prepare the PPT for. It looks very compatible to the existing neighborhood, and also this the building design is very sloped roof and with contemporary elements, large glazing windows. From the street, also we did the streetscape study. Requires that the garage has to be detached from the building. So we have the new garage detached from both new building and the existing building. And sorry, I have some renderings. Can I share my window?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay.
We have to have that as a package that we can put up.
Okay. I'm sorry, because I don't know that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is a streetscape study. So all the streets have the character is like the garage or carport detached from the building. So our proposed garage is detached, and the front entrance is facing to the street. So both the two buildings, the existing building, we didn't change the entrance, but the new building, the entrance is fronting to the Rockhurst Road. And this new building seems, because before current existing looks like some kind of missing on the street, because this one, the top rendering, this is photo merge to the aerial photo. So you can see that the street front of the Rockhurst is complete instead of a void. So the new building actually improved the streetscape of the Rockhurst. And from the Garrison Street, the building, we add a new level to the existing building, and do some renovation and some contemporary elements on the facade design. Use some cedar siding, and but the original character of the brick and the chimney is maintained. And in the application also include the easement, service easement, because there is no service access available from the Rockhurst Street, Rockhurst Road. So we have to, the closest connection is on the Garrison Street. So we create, oh, sorry, this is the street front renderings. It seems that this building is not alien to the neighborhood. I think it can be very compatible to the neighborhood. So this, yeah. And the continue that the closed service connection is on the Garrison Street. So to bring the service to the new created parcel, we created a easement on the 51 Garrison property. So there is also to in our this previous application, the easement was very close to the property between 51 and 49 Garrison. But to protect the trees, we further set back the easement from the previous 6 inches to 3 feet 6 inches to protect the trees on the neighbor's property. So yeah, this is basically our application. And any question?
Thank you, Mr. Kai. Mr. Wildman.
Thank you, Chair. Just for staff, we're talking about an easement that's necessary to service one of the lots. Yet there's no condition included for an easement. Can I have some elaboration from staff on that?
Yes, through the chair,
Your audio's off, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I thought we had included an easement. It might be embedded in one of the other conditions. Let me try and verify that for you here. Apologies for the awkward silence. I'm in fact not seeing it, but would be supportive of adding said requirement as needed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That, in order to get my support, we're definitely going to need an easement for the servicing there. Second, for Ms. Young, I'm just curious, is she comfortable with running the servicing near that tree?
Oops. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's not the best option to have the easement there, but the applicant has made a significant effort to move the easement as far away from the neighbor's tree as possible, including adding bends in the services to stay further away. So I think it's acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nato, while we have you on online, condition 6, a noise attenuation study. Could you explain why that's necessary?
I believe it's necessary as a result of proximity to a arterial whose name I am currently forgetting. It may be Wellington West in this case.
Well, either Wellington or Island Park Drive.
Yes.
We already completed the noise study by the gradient wind engineering, and this their such recommendation is there's no issue of the noise because the noise standard is way below the requirement. So yeah.
Okay, so that will be submitted to the planning branch of the building code services in addition to in advance of building permit being granted. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Nato. That's cleared up.
Mr. Chair, if I could just interrupt, I believe condition number 2 addresses the easement.
from staff in the staff report. The second paragraph.
Oh, yes, yes.
So it speaks specifically to the utility easement off of Garrison.
Yes. To the satisfaction of the development review manager of the relevant branch with the planning, infrastructure, and economic development department, or his her designed to be confirmed in writing from the department to the committee that the existing building and okay. The water. Okay, if they do cross or do not connect directly or are not independent, and
You
this
see that
is-
there, Mr. Nato?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but it's, yeah, the second paragraph being the first paragraph on the third page of the report.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, could the committee coordinator just put that little section up on the screen for me? I'm having a trouble accessing that. All I have is my summary sheet right now. Yeah, I was looking for the excerpt from the staff report.
Just one moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm comfortable, Mr. Chair, just probably something in the future when we have our conditions that we should, if an easement is required, that on the summary sheet, it should also say that as well. Thank you.
Okay. So we're covered, Mr. Wildman.
Yes, I think so.
All right. Any questions from the other members of the panel regarding this application? Okay, so Mr. Kai, you're aware of Hydro Ottawa's comments about maintaining clearances and the right-of-way people telling you that you need private approach permits to put those driveways in. And the conditions, cash in lieu of parkland independent services, which include the utility corridor, the utility easement, accessory structure demolished, grading and drainage plan before building permit is granted. Corner site triangle needs to be a bit for Garrison and Rockers needs to be determined. And you already done the noise attenuation study, which indicate that there is no issue with noise. So that you'll be presenting to the building, I guess, building code services before
Yes.
permit approval. All right.
Yes.
All in favor of granting this application as amended? All right, Mr. Guy, good luck with your project. Your application has been granted.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next application is item 13 on the agenda, 37 Mason Terrace. Minor variance is to permit a reduced front yard, easterly side yard, and increased roof projection into the easterly yard for a new front entrance addition and a proposed front-facing carport on the east side of the existing detached dwelling. The agent for the applicant is Mark Connolly. Is he there?
Yes, I'm here.
Your address, please, Mr. Connolly.
I'm representing 37 Mason Terrace, and it's Mark Connolly.
All right. If you give us a brief presentation, you're aware of the objections from the Old Ottawa East Community Association?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you can address those, if you could address those as well in your comments.
Sure. I wasn't planning on doing a presentation, but given the fact that we received these comments this morning.
So did we.
I'm sorry?
So did we.
Yeah, okay. So yes, I will briefly respond to the Old Ottawa East Community Association comments.
Okay.
They had 4 comments.
But if you could take us through your application first and then respond to their comments, that'd be fine.
Sure. So what we're asking for is a carport to be constructed at the side of the building. We have the side yard setback should be 0.6 meters. We've asked for a reduced setback of 0.337 meters. We've also asked for a minor variance for the eave protection or eave projection on the east side of 0.108 meters. We've just to note, we have included that into the design of the carport. So it's the eaves trough is actually incorporated into that that detail.
Okay.
We are looking at a front yard setback for a proposed front porch, enclosed front porch of 5.5 meters, as opposed to the required setback of 6 meters. And we're also asking for a minor variance for the to permit the construction of a front-facing carport.
All right. And the planning department is in agreement with these changes from the 17th of March.
If you're asking me, the planning report was.
I'm asking the planning department, sir.
Okay, sorry.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay. Please proceed, sir.
Okay, so if you permit me, I'll address the comments that came from the Old Ottawa East Community Association this morning. They had four comments, and I will very briefly respond to those for you.
Okay.
Comment 1 was their concern about excavation within the 4.4 meter within 4.4 meters of the existing tree that's at the street.
Mm-hmm.
We've addressed this issue with Ms. Nancy Young and had our arborist amend his report to specifically address this concern. And we will ensure that permit drawings will indicate that no excavation is to happen within 4.4 meters.
Okay.
Okay. Comment 2, enclosed porches. The planners comment that, quote unquote, there is evidence of protruding roofed over porches along the same street. That is in fact correct. Our streetscape character analysis, the SCA report, identifies the houses that have enclosed porches. Should be noted, both houses on either side of the proposed addition have enclosed porches. So that's 41 Mason Terrace and 33 Mason Terrace. Additionally, 49 Mason Terrace, 50 Mason Terrace, and 40 Mason Terrace also have enclosed porches. comment 3, front-facing carport. The association commented that it wasn't a common feature on the street, but we kept this carport open on three sides to minimize the impact from the street, which is acknowledged in the planner's report.
Okay.
And comment 4, claim that the documentation was misleading. We kind of disagree with that. The streetscape analysis report is accurate. It included 32 photos, which are accurately labeled. The photo that the association is referring to was a supplemental information. There were 7 photos given at the time of the initial application. And yes, there were 2 photos that should have read view from neighboring house to the east. Those were the only typos. And those photos actually show the enclosed porch to 33 Mason Terrace, which is the next door neighbor.
Okay.
In summary, we've submitted 8 letters of support, 2 of which are the most impacted neighbors, both on either side of this house.
Mhm.
And 2 neighbors directly across the street. And we have 4 other letters of support, 26 Mason Terrace, 50 Mason Terrace, 45 Mason Terrace, and 25 Mason Terrace. That's all I have, and I thank you.
Thank you. If you could, for the benefit of the committee, please address the 4 tests.
Yes. Yeah, we still believe that meeting the requirements of the general intent of the official plan. We also believe that we've met the general intent of the zoning bylaw and meeting the intent of the appropriate development within the neighborhood. And we believe it's minor in nature.
How? You meet the official plan. How do you meet the official plan? How do you meet the intent purpose of the zoning bylaw? How is it minor, and how is it desirable and appropriate? Just saying it is doesn't explain it to us.
Based on these SCA reports, we believe that there's a lot of evidence of similar developments in the area, both existing and new.
And the intent purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. How do we meet? How do you meet those 2?
We believe that what we're asking for is fairly minor in nature. We've addressed concerns of the planners, the planning department, and we've done everything we can to try and minimize any impact on the streetscape.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Wilder, you had a question or comment?
Yes, first, I guess, to Ms. Young. In the comments from I'm not sure if you've seen the comments from that came in today from the Ottawa East Community Association. It says that apparently there's, in fact, more steps descending to the driveway, gives the false impression that fewer steps towards the tree will be required. And I guess they're concerned that insufficient attention is being paid to the recommendation of yourself, the forester, that absolutely no excavation occurs within 4.4 meter of the tree. And can you give me your thoughts on that? Are you satisfied with what's been sort of agreed to between yourselves and the applicant?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I have had quite a bit of back and forth with the applicant, and the arborist has provided an addendum stating that there should be no excavation within 4.4 meters and that he's not concerned with there being excavation at that distance from the tree. So the applicant has agreed that there won't be excavation there, and also to consider the use of helical piles or slab on grade construction for the steps and the stairs of the entrance rather than full depth excavation. So that should limit the impact to the trees even beyond 4.4 meters. So I am satisfied with that.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Young. Just another question to the applicant. It's mentioned here that the proposed enclosed porch, the 6 meter setback, the requirement represents the most non-compliant enclosed front porch on the street. I would have hoped that you would have shown us rather than the street, some individual examples, maybe 5 or 6 individual examples of both the enclosed and non-enclosed porches, just so we could get a grasp of exactly what else is on the street, what the streetscape looks like elsewhere on the block, but just pointedly to some of the individual buildings, so we can get a better understanding and see where the Ottawa East Community Association is making their comment from. It's saying also that the proposed front-facing carport would still protrude beyond the existing front face of the building. Is in fact that the case? My second question.
To your first question, in terms of, I do not have the dimensions for the neighbors on each side of the house, but their projection appears to be approximately 5 feet, or 1.5 meters. We could, if necessary, provide that information during the building permit process. And your next question, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Well, the front-facing carport.
Yes.
It says their comment, the front-facing carport is not permitted in the street character analysis because it would still protrude beyond the existing front face of the building.
Right.
Dealing with the variance for the construction of the front-facing carport. Is that in fact the case? It will protrude beyond the front face of the building?
It will protrude, yes, in front of the existing face, but it will not protrude in front of the new addition of the vestibule.
All right, thank you.
And that's clear from the site plan that you provided us with.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. I believe we also have Mr. Rose still online from the Old Ottawa East Community Association, if he's there.
I'm here, Mr. Chair, if you're ready for my comments.
Yes, your address for the record, please.
Name is Ron Rose. My address is 264 Main Street, Ottawa.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, a great deal of the notes that I sent this morning have been addressed as far as the tree is concerned. We continue to have great concerns about the tree, but we understand from correspondence this morning that an agreement has been reached and that all parties are satisfied with the new negotiated agreement. We would just hope that the terms of that agreement would be included within any report that the committee may choose. Mr. Chair, I do apologize for having sent my comments rather late in the process, it was necessary to await the comments of the city planner, and we very much appreciate receiving his comments. I just wanted to remark on some of the answers that Mr. Connolly gave. First of all, regarding the existence of unenclosed porches and covered entryways along other portions of Mason Terrace. And he mentioned specifically number 41, number 33, etc. These are unenclosed, protruding entrances, and they are perfectly allowed on Mason Terrace according to the zoning. What is not allowed is an enclosed front entrance. And as we state in our submission, there are other enclosed porches on the street, but they comply with the 6-meter setback. This would be the only enclosed porch which would violate the zoning setback. And I also believe that the comments on the carport protruding beyond the face of the existing building have been confirmed. I do wish to point out that our comment about one of the photos being misleading, I can accept that it was mislabeled and in fact should point to the view of a neighboring house, not the existing house. But I still contend that labeling that photo as showing the existing house with its 5 steps does give a false impression of the number of stairs that will be required to extend towards the tree. You've had a chance to read my other observations, and we have addressed them. My final concern is just a thought, although consultation with the community association is not mandatory. We regret that the proponent did not reach out to the community association to explain the need for these requests for the granting of minor variances. Such consultation is suggested by the notice of public record provided by the Committee of Adjustment. Thank you very much for your attention and consideration, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Final comments, Mr. Conley?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm not sure if your staff has the ability to call up the photos for the SCA report. I appreciate Mr. Rose's comments, but I do have to disagree with his comments about no enclosed porches. Our SCA report has photos which clearly shows that 41 Mason Terrace, which is right next to the subject property, is enclosed. 49 Mason Terrace has an enclosed porch. So I'm not sure if there's the ability to call up our initial or SCA report. 50 Mason Terrace is definitely it's an enclosed porch, brick. 42 Mason Terrace. The photos are very clear. These are not uncovered porches. They are what I would call vestibules. So other than that, I respect Mr. Rose's comments, but the addresses that I mentioned earlier about enclosed porches, I would say they are enclosed.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Conley.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Very briefly, Mr. Rose.
Simply to point out that, yes, there are a number of enclosed porches on the street, but they are all within the zoning bylaw, that even the front of the enclosed porches still respects the 6-meter setback. So yes, we accept that there are protruding porches, enclosed porches, but they comply with the zoning bylaw. The proposed development at 37 Mason Terrace would not comply. And we would point out that the exception that was granted to create a 6-meter setback was in fact created to extend the previous 3-meter front setback to 6 meters specifically for this particular neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Mr. Conley, just to briefly recap on the changes to your variances. A, permit a reduced front yard setback of 5.5 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum front yard setback of 6. Variance B was eliminated. Variance C, reduced easterly side yard setback of 0.337, whereas the bylaw for a minimum side yard setback is 0.6. D, an amendment to permit an increased projection for the overhang of proposed carport roof in brackets, and this is the change, including enclosed eaves trough on bracket to within 0.108 meters of the property line, whereas the bylaws permits a maximum projection within 0.3 of the property line. And then the new one was E, to permit the construction of a front-facing carport, whereas the bylaw states no front-facing or corner-facing attached garage or carport is permitted unless it meets the dominant character group's requirement further to a streetscape character analysis, which you have presented. And there were, the department has no conditions that they're asking for. And there's a standard condition from Ottawa Hydro requesting you to maintain clearances from their equipment. So yeah, we have this in front of us, and I'd like to reserve on this application. So what we will do, gentlemen, is we are going to reserve on the application, and you will receive the decision from us in 10 days. Thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Now on to the final application of the day. 11 and 13 Acacia Avenue, 131 Putnam Avenue. And this is back before us, adjourned from May 5th and adjourned from April 21st and the 5th of May. Consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to create a new lot for future residential development. Existing 2-story residential building is to remain. The existing detached shed located at the rear of the property is to be demolished. And then there are minor variances for a reduced lot area, a reduced rear yard setback, and a reduced amenity area, and to permit balcony projections in the rear yard and no soft landscaping or aggregated rectangular area of soft landscaping for the existing 2-story residential building. And the applicant's agent is Ms. Holmes. Are you there, Ms. Holmes?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm here.
And for the record, your address, please.
566 Crossfield Avenue.
And we'll have to go through the solemn declaration again. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so hopefully third time's a charm.
I'm hoping that you've saved the best for last.
All right, if you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Ms. Holmes. Okay.
You're muted.
Yeah, can't hear you.
I was just at the good part too. My apologies. The site itself is located in blue, identified in blue on the slide before you. The site itself is located in a block that's bound by Chapleau Avenue to the north, Putnam Avenue to the west, Acacia Avenue to the east, and it's Beechwood to the south. It's about 5 lots in. As you can tell, it's a relatively unique block. It's actually one I've never come across before in my career in planning, so I thought it was quite interesting. And in fact, the configuration of the block or the road geometry creates this uniqueness of the block. As a result of that, the lot pattern is actually quite varied. There are a range, I would say, of lots, sizes, widths, and depths. And there's also a range of residential densities on the site. So it's a really interesting mix of new development along Putnam, some singles, some low-rise apartments, semis, and obviously Beechwood Avenue is a commercial strip. And as you can see from the slide, the subject property is the only through lot in the entire block. Next slide, please. This is to give you a sense of the existing property along Acacia. So it's 11 and 13 Acacia frontage. It's an existing 2-story building. The building is not proposed to change in any way as a result of this application. It'll remain as is, no physical changes to the footprint or the exterior. Next slide, please. This is the property from the back. It's the Putnam Avenue side. It's previously been used as parking for the tenants of 11 and 13 Acacia. It's an underdeveloped lot. It's proposed to be severed and proposed to be sold for redevelopment to improve the aesthetic of the street. Next slide, please. Here again, we're back to the lot itself, an aerial perspective of the lot. We used this to complete a lot analysis. As you can see, the southern end of the block is substantively narrower than the northern end of the block. And I looked at approximately 10 lots on both the Putnam side and on the Acacia side. And 2 kind of things jumped out at me. The first one being that many of the lots are actually substantively smaller than the bylaw requires with respect to the new zoning. And the other one is that there is actually quite a bit of range in terms of the lot widths and lot size. So the lot that's being proposed along the Putnam side is very much in keeping with the existing lot fabric. It's slightly larger than a number of the lots, but within this block, which is substantively tighter and smaller setbacks, it's not out of context relative to the existing block. Next slide, please. The next slide will be, I'm going to start talking before it goes on, just because there's a bit of a lag. There, thank you. So there are 2 parcels that are being proposed. The first one is the retained parcel, which is the Acacia side, and the second parcel is the one along Putnam. And when we were looking at this proposal, we had quite a lively debate, a philosophical debate about where to take our guidance from with respect to the property line. Because as you can see, the properties to the north, the one along Acacia is substantively, I guess, deeper than the property along Putnam, whereas the opposite is true on the south side of the block. So the properties to the south, which is also along Acacia side anyways, is a low-rise apartment building, is substantively shallower than the other lots to the north. And the property along the Putnam side is kind of equal to what's being proposed here. So we took our guidance that we wanted to create two relatively equal-sized properties, which is the proposal before you today. The Putnam side requires no minor variance because it meets the minimum requirements for a number of the uses in the R4UC zone. And the Acacia side is being sought to normalize, I guess, the lot that would be remaining as a result of this application. And I can take you through the foretest of a minor variance, Mr. Chair. So the site is actually designated general urban area in the City of Ottawa official plan. I provided this slide for context in terms of discussions around grades and retaining walls. I did a couple of examples just kind of in the neighborhood of how different developments have incorporated grades, how they've dealt with grade challenges in the neighborhood. As you can see, some of them incorporated into landscaping, others incorporate the foundation as the retaining wall. So it was just to provide an illustration of what's possible. So with respect to the foretest of a minor variance, the site is designated general urban area in the City of Ottawa official plan. It encourages intensification. There's no issues with respect to the application offending any of the policies of the official plan. The zoning, it respects the zoning. It's a R4UC zone. The uses are permitted on both the proposed and the retained lot. Since there's no proposal on the proposed lot, it'll have to be in keeping with whatever the R4UC zoning permits. With respect to the site itself, the vacant site does not fulfill its planned function. There's a better way, the highest and best use for the property that would be fulfilled as a result of this application. The Acacia building doesn't meet many of the requirements of the bylaw because it predates the bylaw, but I think that's in keeping with the rest of the block, which also does not meet many of the provisions of the bylaw, including minimum lot areas. And the variances and the severance will allow for the site to fulfill a higher and better use. The site is the variances and the application is desirable. The current configuration is an anomaly within the larger block. As you can see, it's the only remaining lot in the area that hasn't been developed. It creates, in my opinion, a gap in the fabric. It creates a break in the urban fabric, and granting the application will allow for the two lots to be equally created to allow for that fabric and the gap to be filled. And it will improve site and the block and completing the block in itself. And I would say the application is also minor. So typically we evaluate minor based on the impact it has on the adjacent properties. And there's no changes proposed as a result of this application. The amenity area requirement that is being requested to be reduced will be met in other ways. So all of the units will have access to private amenity areas. The top units will have access to the balconies that are on the second story, as you can see them from the Acacia elevation. The middle units will have access to rear balconies, which is why we're asking for a variance to allow projections for the wooden veranda that's currently there. And the bottom units will have access to walkout areas right directly in front, which will actually be larger than what would typically be required for the bylaw. So it'd be 30 meters collectively, whereas 36 meters is being proposed. And there'll be no impact on the adjacent properties as a result of this proposal, as there's no physical changes to the lot at this time. And as such, it meets the tests and is in the public interest and recommended for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wildman, you had some comments and questions, I believe, for staff and for the applicant.
Yes. I will say, though, it is nice when an applicant actually addresses the forecasts rather than just states that they have been met. So thank you for that. Is there a plan that we can just look at for a moment where we look down upon the lot and we see the new lot line relative to the retaining wall?
Mr. Chair, there's one in the presentation, although I will admit it doesn't necessarily come through entirely clear on the screen.
Maybe the coordinator can zoom in a bit if possible. And Ms. Holmes, whoops, I lost that. Could we put that back up? So you're right, it is a little difficult to tell, but from what I gather, the wall is a fair distance away from the lot line.
Mr. Chair, that through you, that's correct. I would say so. It is a bit of an irregular lot. It's deeper all on the northern side and the southern side, but I measured it roughly about 5 meters in.
Okay, so I guess that shaded area, that sort of grayish area, is the wall, correct?
That's correct. You can see that there's a shed, an existing shed
Yes.
that's going to be relocated, and up
And
from
I gather that's the stair off to the bottom corner behind the shed, sort of thing.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay. And at one time there was quite a concern over slope stability, and I mean, your presentation helped quite a bit, and this image helps somewhat as well. I mean, slope stability is typically a situation where you feel that there's a rotational failure that's going to happen, or something fairly significant. So you mentioned that there could be integration of some sort. Like basically, the wall, being that the wall is now over here, and there's quite a distance from the lot line. Where I guess what you would want to see is that if there was something going on, that it could be wholly done on part 2, so that you're not, for example, having to dig up part of the existing property where the other building is in order to shore things up and all that. So I'm reasonably comfortable with what I'm seeing here. We don't know yet where this future building would be. And we don't know how you might hold things up, but you have about 5 meters, as you said, to work with. So that's correct, right? Okay. So I have to say I'm pretty perplexed with the original comments, having now seen your presentation and having seen this this image here that we're looking at, and I guess the coordinator can take that down now. But whenever I see a comment from staff saying something about concerns with slope stability, it does trouble me quite a bit to just sort of move off of that. And you know, you want to make sure you're doing things right. Secondly, I think just by looking at the number of stairs there and the shed that's at grade, it looks like that wall right now is about 5.5 feet high. Would that be a reasonable estimate?
I think it's approximately 6.
6, okay. So I'm even more perplexed about why slope stability is an issue. That's not a slope, that's just retained earth. So that is a different thing altogether for me. But I want to give staff a chance to explain to us as a committee what they envisage happening now from just a processing standpoint on how that grade differential will be handled before we grant this request. So if staff could just elaborate now on how they see this unfolding.
I'm just signing on here to introduce Amy Whalen, who's also on the call and has produced provided the engineering review on this one. Amy?
I'm just trying to figure out how to start my video here. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Amy Whalen from the City of Ottawa. I'm working with the building development review. But yeah, so we developed with the applicant a condition which will tie the applicant as well as the purchaser of the vacant lands into a development agreement that will take into account the retaining wall as well as any geotechnical and structural issues that will arise with the proposed development, excuse me. And we did this in order to allow flexibility for the purchaser of the vacant lot to potentially utilize the grade change in a development proposal, or if they wish to move the wall, it's also encompassed. So I feel that our condition is covering everything that we need from a development review and engineering standard, as well as incorporating the Bell utility pole. So that's basically it.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to mention that I'd seen the utility pole in the presentation and wondered about that. But so the development agreement, what does it say about that wall?
Let me just pull it up on my personal.
You don't have to go verbatim, just in general.
Sure. Yeah, so basically the development agreement is going to tie, as I said before, the applicant and the purchaser of the vacant lots into a development agreement where they've committed to relocate, modify, or remove the retaining wall at their costs, and as well as address drainage and grading and structural integrity of the wall, and as well enter a joint use and maintenance of the solution. And this will also incorporate the Bell utility pole. So as a result of development, they are agreeing to relocate, modify, or remove the pole at their cost as well.
Okay. And so there's somewhere in there that says it'll be done by an engineer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And so what's the joint use piece? If the wall is 5 meters away, it's what's the benefit for the other owner that in the existing building?
I think the joint use and maintenance is in regards to, well, basically because this retaining wall is serving the purpose of retaining lands which benefit the acacia side, the to be retained lands, that is still going to be incorporated in the future. So what they decide to do with this wall and how they decide to move it will jointly affect both properties, as well as the grading and drainage. So
okay, I may be getting a little nitpicky, but I'm not seeing why the other owner would be responsible for maintenance of it, given it's 5 meters away. But I think that based on what you've told me, the development agreement will address the concern. And based on that, Mr. Chair, I feel we've gotten a long way further than we were before, where we were talking about slope stability studies and the like. So, Mr. Chair,
we eliminated some of the confusion, Mr. Wildman.
Pardon me?
We eliminated some of the confusion.
Yes, yes. So thank you to Ms. Whalen and Ms. Holmes. It was helpful. And I'm comfortable now.
Mr. Wilder, you had a comment? You're muted, Mr. Wilder.
Ms. Holmes, a few things I want to clarify. How many tenants are there in the current building that's being severed from the vacant lot?
So there are 6 units, Mr. Chair.
Are they all occupied at the moment?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, no.
Sorry, 3 are vacant right now?
They're all vacant.
Oh, all 6 are. How did that happen? What is the reason for them being all vacant?
There were some upgrades to the interior of the building that the property owner was doing.
So you're doing major interior renovations to the entire building?
I don't know that they're major. They're renovations to the interior of the building.
I see. So the tenants that were there before, the 6 tenants, did they have vehicles?
I'm not sure.
Well, just to put it another way, the lot that's to be severed, the vehicles that parked on that lot, Were those vehicles connected to the tenants in that building?
Originally, yes. I would assume yes.
I see. So in other words, when the building is once again rented after whatever renovations are being undertaken, it's with the understanding to these tenants that there will be no available parking to them.
That's correct.
So if they have vehicles all of a sudden now, because it's a very tight area, there's going to be potentially anywhere from 1 to 6 more vehicles on the street if they have vehicles, correct?
I would say yes. I would just note that there's no requirement for parking for units.
I understand
for units less than 8.
I understand that.
And
that was
that's
obviously a concern. I believe that was a concern of the neighborhood in terms of, what ultimately what could happen with the removal of this lot in terms of additional parking, parking. Anyway, that aside. So your client has no idea yet when, whether he's selling this lot and having someone else build on it?
The intent is for the lot to be severed and sold for somebody else to develop it.
I see. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the members of the panel regarding this? Ms. Oakeshott.
Thanks. I just wonder if Ms. Holmes could clarify. I'm not sure if I heard correctly. You mentioned that the tenants in the floor units at the back, they would have more area than they have now to walk out onto. That seemed to be what I heard, and that didn't seem right. So.
No, thank you for that question. No, what I was suggesting is that the area that's going to be available to them would be more than what the bylaw would typically require for 2 units. Not that they would have more than what's there now.
2 units, but it's a 6-unit building.
That's correct. So the 4 units that are on the first story along Acacia, and I guess second story on the backside, and the top units have access to private balconies at the front, at the front of the rear, and the basement units will have access to amenity area directly in front of their units.
Okay, it's still less than the required amenity area though.
In total, yes, it is, and that's one of the variances that we're seeking. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So Sharon, do you still want to reserve on this application?
Yes, I think so. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And no further questions, Mr. Wildman, you're satisfied with the response from the applicant and staff?
Yeah, much more clear on the slope stability, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
That's the last thing we want to have happen is applications fall down.
I'm in agreement with that, and I appreciate
yeah.
I appreciate the comments for flagging that to us. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you to Ms. Whalen.
Thank you very much.
Adam. And what we'll do is reserve on this application, and you will have our decision in 10 days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with that application dealt with, we have now concluded this this hearing in the Committee of Adjustment. This hearing is now terminated. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.